You realize that in our society today, that Torah cannot be kept as it is written.
Brother, you are really grasping at straws right now. And one claim that I will agree with you on is that messianics only like to do the parts of Torah that they enjoy. Yes, they are not doing the ritual purity laws or nidah or things like that. And we need to indict ourselves on that because we're able to do that in the diaspora. Another thing that I'd like to cite you on, though, is that unlike Socrates, who drowned the young man in water almost and gave him a desire to seek wisdom as much as he desired air, you are not properly seeking the knowledge that you need to equip yourself with to be teaching on this platform. Instead, you are just looking at passages that have been butchered for confirmation bias purposes. Another thing is you don't listen to what Donald Rumsfeld talked about. And he said something to the tune of that there are a lot of things that we don't know, meaning there are things that we don't know that we're unaware of not knowing. There are libraries of information out there, especially on these subjects. A second claim that you made is that we're not able to do biblical laws in the diaspora, which is another lie. Because take this analogy, for example. US code says you're not allowed to go and feed the wildlife in the forest. And also, when you're abroad, you're subject to the US law that says you're not allowed to be an unauthorized diplomat. So if you're abroad and you're engaging in diplomatic relations, when you come back to the US, you'll end up being arrested or you'll have to be extradited back to this country. In that same manner, God's law applies even outside the land. The third claim that you made that I'd like to address is this idea that when people are done with their pregnancies, they are then engaging in sexual intercourse as partners once again. They are not following the purity law to abstain from intercourse for so many days after they have either a male or female child. Now, this is a disingenuous claim because our medical practices here in the United States involve the doctors suggesting to a woman not to engage in sexual intercourse for so many days after she's had a child. And if you lived outside of being under a rock, you would know this. A third claim that you made that was disingenuous is that we must now be stoning our children to death. Otherwise, we're not doing Torah. Actually, that's incorrect. It would be the opposite. If we were stoning our children to death, we wouldn't be doing Torah because A, the capital punishment laws of the law are constrained geographically to the land of Israel, and B, there's a requirement to have elders at the city gates to administer the punishment or to make the decision to punish the child. It says in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 18, if a man have a stubborn and rebellious son which will not obey the voice of his father, the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him will not hearken unto them, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him and bring him unto the elders of his city and unto the gate of his place. So we can't just do this at will. And they shall say unto the elders of the city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones that he die, so that thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. Now, since the elders are the ones with the right to pronounce judgment over the young man, is it not possible for them to be able to have mercy or pity on the young man? The young man could be brought to them at the gates and they could say, well, Yahweh has had mercy on us in so many ways, and so maybe we should give him another chance. This is why the apostle Yaakov says in James chapter 2 and verse 13, for judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful. Mercy triumphs over judgment. So this does not mean in every individual case was a child being stoned. And let me present you with 2 Timothy chapter 3 verses 15 through 16 before I finish reading this epistle for you, which I would absolutely love to do. It says, and that from a child you have known the holy scriptures, which are able to make you wise unto salvation through faith, which is in Messiah Yeshua. Meaning that our desire to seek knowledge from the Tanakh should be complemented with faith in the Messiah. Verse 16, all scripture, meaning all of the Tanakh, okay, we're not talking about the New Testament here, is given by inspiration of Elohim and is profitable for doctrine. Brother, you don't believe that the Tanakh is profitable for doctrine, even though Paul told Timothy this. For reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. So the very document you claim is done away with, Paul says is profitable for instruction in righteousness. Now, what are you going to do about that? And you know how I know it's profitable for instruction in righteousness? Well, when Paul wrote this letter to Timothy, this is dated at around 67 AD, and we did not have a compilation or even a list of canon New Testament texts until the year 180 AD. So, what would Paul have been referring to as scriptures before 180 AD? I'll let you think about that. James chapter 2 and verse 10, this is coming back to the epistle. It says, "For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all." And people use this to say the law is done away with. No, all James is saying is that if you're an idolater or you're a murderer, then you're guilty of the whole thing. It's just like if you negotiate a contract with somebody and there are 5 terms and you violate one of the terms of the contract, it's able to be terminated. He says, "For he said, 'Do not commit adultery,' and said also, 'Do not kill.' Now, if you commit no adultery, yet if you kill, you have become a transgressor of the law. So speak you, and so do, as they that shall be judged by the law of liberty." Now, James is saying that we need to conduct ourselves as though we're constantly being judged by what is written in the letter of Torah. That's why we're not supposed to transgress even in one area, and we're supposed to do our best not to do that. Now, what is the law of liberty, you might ask? Now, James refers to the Torah as the law of liberty, just as David did. And when Christians say that the law is slavery, they mean it with a negative connotation, and that's the problem. So David says in Psalm 119, verse 45, which is a verse that many Christians disagree with, "I will walk about in freedom, for I have sought out your precepts," meaning the commandments that come from his law. Now let's jump to verse 19. "Thou believest that there is one Elohim. Thou doest well. The devils or demons also believe and tremble. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead?" This is destroying a lot of Christian theology right now. "Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Seest thou how faith wrought with his works? And by works was faith made perfect? And the scripture was fulfilled, which saith, Abraham believed Yahweh, and it was counted to him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of Yahweh." So Genesis 15:6, when it says believed, that does not mean an intellectual activity like is taught in the Sunday church. Oh, Abraham only believed that God existed and believed in God as an intellectual activity. He just confirmed the message, and then it was counted to him as righteousness. No, James is making it clear that Abraham followed through with his actions of faithfulness, with his actions of emunah. And that is the true meaning of Genesis 15:6. And brother, I also read this the other day on my channel, was Ephesians chapter 2. So in Ephesians chapter 2, does Paul admonish us to continue being Gentiles? Does Ephesians chapter 2 tell us that the law of Moses is what causes division between Jew and Gentile? Thirdly, how can Paul admonish us to become Israel, like grafted in, if there is no prescription by which to do so? Meaning, if the law is indeed done away with, then how do we become a part of Israel? Because it's the law that describes the process for doing so. And this is exactly why James chapter 3 and verse 1 says, "My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that you shall receive greater condemnation," or judgment. "For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body." So basically, if we're going to teach, we need to be uniquely qualified to do so. Not by Babylonian institutions, not by the PhD at the theological seminary, but by Elohim himself and his spirit. And yes, when James is saying this, he does include being part of the priestly system as a thing that requires double judgment, because not all Levites were priests. Now, all priests were Levites, but again, not all Levites were priests. And there was this great debate among the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the Sadducees controlled temple worship, by the way, about how the Omer count is done. Now, if anyone had proper understanding, Leviticus 23 says after the Sabbath you begin the Omer count. So that doesn't mean after the high Sabbath, like the Pharisees were saying that means after the weekly Sabbath, like the Sadducees were saying. So Shavuot always falls on the first day of the week.